Okay, so today I'll take a little bit of a continuation and repetition of how an ionic compound is formed. Okay, and we are going to look into the detail again. So it's a repetition. Yes, the initial first 10 minutes will be repeated what we did yesterday, because I feel many missed it, and even my, because of my internet at my end was a little bit weaker, so my voice was not clear. Okay, so we are going to look into the concepts again. Let's me share the screen. Okay. Yeah. So we start again with yesterday's topic, that is formation of ionic compounds. Okay. Just a minute. Okay. So should we start? First of all, ionic compounds are those compounds which will lose or gain their electrons. Okay. Which type of electrons they'll be losing or gaining? Sirisha, which type of electrons will they lose or gain? Shirisha? Okay. How about Gaurav?
Positive and negative.
No, which type of electrons, which electrons will the atom lose to become a negative or a positive ions? Will it lose all the electrons?
No, ma'am. The
No. So which electrons it is going to lose
to
or gain? Let's say lose or gain, either way.
to make 8 electron.
Yes, but yeah, kind of you are right. But the thing is, the electrons which will be lost, the electrons which the atom will be losing or gaining will be the valence electrons, right? What are valence electrons? The valence electrons are the electrons present in the outermost shell of the atom, correct? So that is why when we are writing the electron dot structure, we mention the valence electron. Remember, I told you this structure. What is the name of this structure? If any one of you remember, you can unmute and give me the answer. What is the name of this structure? Sorry, not structure, this way of representing the valence electrons.
Electrons are out.
There's a name for this.
Lewis
Yes.
dot
Yes.
Lewis dot
Lewis dot structure. Thank you very much. So in Lewis dot structure, Lewis, the chemist or the scientist, the person was very clear that we are going to represent only the valence electrons. Valence electrons are those electrons which will be the outermost electrons. Okay. And they will be the ones who will be participating in the ionic compound formation. Right. So here, who will tell me sodium will be a positive ion? Why? Can you give an explanation, please?
Because it will lose one electron.
Yes, that is true. But then how it is a +1 charge?
And the atom which loses electron has positive ion.
Correct, Gaurav and Akhil, you are right. But I'll repeat this. Sodium has 11 protons and it has 11 electrons. So the total charge of the sodium atom is 0. Correct? But in sodium ion, what happens? 11 protons are there. Correct? But 1 electron is lost. So it becomes 10 electrons. So plus 10 minus 1. Sorry, plus 11 minus 10, 1. Right? Remember, we did this yesterday. Those who have missed out, for you, it is the repetition. So sodium atom has 11 protons and 11 electrons. So the total charge on sodium atom is 0. Okay. But in sodium ion, it's going to lose an electron. Therefore, the proton number is not changing. Therefore, plus 11. And it's losing 1 electron. So it's 10 minus 10. So plus 10, 11 minus 10 will give us a +1. Is this clear, Akhil? Gaurav?
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Ramakrishna, Shirisha, all of you clear? Thank you, Kalpana, for saying yes. Okay. Now, same thing we can say for chlorine atom and chlorine ion. Okay. And chlorine ion has -1 charge. Okay, how does it happens? Chlorine has how many electrons? 17 electrons. Okay, so that means it has 17 protons and 17 electrons. So the total charge on the chlorine atom is 0. But when we talk about the chlorine ion, it takes 1 electron from the metal. So 1 electron it's getting, it is being donated to the chlorine. So what happens? The number of protons will remain the same as plus 17, right? The P is representing just the proton. Okay, so don't get confused with the P. It's just to show that it's proton. We have to look at the sign plus 17. Now it has gained one more electron, so therefore it's minus 18. Correct? So minus 18 plus 1 is minus 1. So that is why sodium we write it as plus 1 charge and chlorine we write it as minus 1. Sodium has given out its electron, therefore the number of electrons have reduced and it's plus 1. So the number of electrons it gives out, that many positive charge. Chlorine has accepted electrons, the number of electrons it will accept, those many negative charge is going to increase, therefore it's minus 1. Is this concept clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
If you want to
ma'am.
write it or
Yes,
note it
ma'am.
down somewhere, take it down, please. Then we'll do the ionic structure. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
Yes,
I'm going
ma'am.
to erase off the whole thing because now we are going to focus on sodium chloride ionic compound formation. And I've actually taken two of them, three similar, and the next two are new. Okay, this we did yesterday, but it's again a repetition, a revision, so that you get this concept very clearly. Okay, so let me just undo it and we'll start. Okay, by the time I'm doing that, please open your textbooks and open the page number. 1 minute, huh? Let me tell you the page number. It's page number 47 and the table for your electronic configuration. What is electronic configuration? It shows the distribution of the electrons among the orbitals. Okay. These are keywords which we'll be using again and again. Okay. So the
Yes, ma'am.
sodium electronic configuration is 281. Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
And chlorine is 2887 or 287?
287.
Yes,
287.
28.
correct. You are looking at the right place. Okay. Now, how to show it? Okay. So we are going to use this section for representing it. So first of all, we'll show the sodium atom, okay, with its valence electron, that is the dot, because it has only one valence electron. So one dot and configuration, sorry, 281. Now sodium is going to lose the electron. So the electron will be the product. And what we get? Sodium plus 1 ion plus 1 electron lost. Then chlorine, how many valence electron it adds? 7. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Sorry. Yeah, 5, 6, 7. Correct? It's going to take 1 electron. So that will be the reactant. Okay. And that will give me what? Chlorine negative ion, right? This is what we did yesterday. Now, how to form the compound? I'm just drawing a line so that it's not mixed up. So sodium with 1 electron, valence electron, chlorine with 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay. Right? Now, sorry, I've already drawn the dot. Okay, so sodium is going to give its electron to chlorine. So automatically it will be a sodium with the +1 charge. How do we show a sodium ion? It's not an atom, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Sorry. Okay, so how we are going to show it? We'll show by a square bracket and a positive charge of 1 because it's a positive ion. Same way we'll show the chlorine ion as square bracket -1. Now shift of the electron from sodium to chlorine. Okay, so you'll show the valence electron of chlorine next to, valence electron of sodium next to chlorine. Sorry for my this thing. And you get an NaCl. All understood? Yesterday we did this, okay? Everyone is
Yes,
clear with
ma'am.
this?
Yes, ma'am.
Now
Yes,
let's
ma'am.
go to the
Yes,
next
ma'am.
one. Magnesium oxide. I'm just going to give you the valency. What is the valency? 282, right?
Yes, ma'am.
And sodium is 26. Oh, sorry, oxygen is 26. So how many valence electrons do magnesium have?
2.
Yes, correct. 2.
2.
Okay. So let's draw the Lewis dot structure. Magnesium, 1 dot, the second dot. 2, 8, 2. So it's going to lose 2 electrons. So it will give you magnesium +2 charge +2 electrons, right? Oxygen has 6, right? 1, 2, 3. Am I right? It will take 2 electrons and form, oxygen negative ion, right? Let's draw it. Magnesium 1, 2 plus oxygen. 1 electron of magnesium comes here. The second electron will come here, right? So that becomes magnesium ion with a positive 2 charge and oxygen with the 2 electrons given by the magnesium negative 2 charge. So you get MgO, I'm sorry. Right? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
All clear? Okay,
Yes,
let's
ma'am.
take one more which we did yesterday and then something new. Okay, again we have a magnesium chloride. So magnesium is 282. Okay, sorry. And chlorine is 287. Right? So let's start. Again, dot structure. 2, 282 gives out 1 electron, 2 electrons plus 2 electrons. You can write your configuration here also, electronic configuration 28, which I have not written right now. Cl. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Needs only 1 electron, so 1 gives us chlorine -1 charge. Now it's very important. Mg has 2 electrons to give, correct? So they'll be, if 1 chlorine comes, it has only 1 space to accommodate this electron of magnesium. So then 1 more electron of magnesium is left out. So the second chlorine will come near it. So 2 chlorine will share 1 electron of magnesium each. So there are 2 chlorine atoms which are coming to share the electrons given out by magnesium. So magnesium ion is +2 charge and 1 atom, 1 ion, whereas chlorine is 2 ions which are there to share 1 electron. So it's -1 charge, but there are 2 electrons. So the 2 electrons are the atoms which are coming to accept or becomes, when they come to form the bond, there are 2 electrons of chlorine. So it's Mg, and you put it as a subscript. Okay. The numbers in the power show the sign, sorry, show the ionic characteristic. Matlab is, sorry, means positive or negative. Whereas the number in the subscript shows how many electrons are, sorry, atoms are participating. So Cl here, there are 2 atoms participation. Charge on chlorine is -1, charge on magnesium is +2. This much is clear. This was the last question that we did yesterday. Okay,
Yes,
yesterday's
ma'am.
class.
Yes.
Now, this is the one which is for you to do. I'm just going to give you your electronics configuration. Aluminum is 283. And chlorine is 287. I'm going to give you 1 minute time. Please try drawing it. Then I'll show you what is the answer. Am I clear? Please go ahead. Okay, let me do it further. You should have written this much initially. Now the compound formation, cross check if you have done, whether it is right or wrong. And if it's not correct, you can go ahead and ask your doubt. Okay. So first of all, Al has the capacity to give out. Yes.
Ma'am, in the chlorine it will be -1 ES, no?
It's in the product, Gaurav.
Yes,
So
ma'am.
none
Yes,
of the
ma'am.
questions I've written plus.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Sorry, ma'am.
That's why I said it's a product. It's giving out 3 electrons. It's a product. Okay. These are the 3 electrons of aluminum. chlorine. One of the chlorine is going to take 1 electron. Okay. For the next 2 electrons of chlorine, sorry, 2 electrons of aluminum, we have 2 more chlorine coming to participate in. I don't have space, so I'm drawing like this. Okay. Similarly, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and this chlorine atom will go. Yeah. Okay, so you can see here that one of the aluminum atom is being shared by each chlorine atom. So how many chlorine atoms have come to participate here? 3 chlorine atoms taking up 1 each electron from the aluminum. So aluminum is only 1 here with a +3 charge. Okay. And chlorine is accepting the electron, but there are 3 chlorine atoms which are participating to accept the electron from the aluminum. So charge is -1, but 3 electrons have been participated. So AlCl3. That's the compound. Hope all got this.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Let's go to the next one. Now we are going to discuss about the properties of ionic compound. Okay. So ionic compound, as you can see in the picture, they look to be hard. Okay. They are solid, but they are not that hard, like simple common salt. If you have seen the salt crystals, even if when you try to crush it with your fingers and hands, it is possible to be done. They are having solid structure because of the force of attraction between the negative ion and the positive ion. So as you can see in the picture, right, the chlorine ions are being combined with the sodium. Can you see these rod-like structures that are nothing bond lines? Okay, the bond which is between the 2 atoms. What is a bond? Bond is the force of attraction between the negative and the positive. We know that positive charges attract each other. So there is a negative charge in chlorine and there is a positive charge between sodium. So the positive charge is attracting and keeping them at a distance, and they are close to each other. So the force is shown by a rod, and we call it as bond. Okay, and they are solid in normal state, room temperature. All the ionic compound are solid in state, but they are brittle, easily breakable when mild pressure is applied. Clear? Next property is it has a very high melting and boiling point. Why it has a very high melting and boiling point? Because we have to use a lot of amount of energy. Lots and lots of energy is required to break the strong ionic bond. The opposite charge is attraction. Negative positive charge of attraction is so strong that we need to first break open. That means you have to give that much energy so that the 2 atoms move away from each other. The distance between the 2 atoms increases. So that is how the bond breaks, the attraction breaks, and the ions are separated out individually. So for that, we need higher amount of energy. Is this point clear to all of you?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
sir.
Okay. So 2 properties we saw. One is they are solid in state, but brittle. High melting point, high boiling point, and the reason is also given. So that is a very important thing that you need to keep in mind. And if you don't understand, let me know. The next one is the solubility. What is the meaning of soluble? They dissolve. Okay, so whenever, as you can see in this bigger picture, the bottom is this picture. 1 minute, let me change the color of my pen. Yes, this one, if you see here, the bottom picture, that is the structure of the salt powder. So you can see this small tiny blue balls are sodium, the green balls are chlorine. Size wise, sodium is smaller than chlorine. So this is the ionic structure of the salt. Okay, the moment the ones which are red ball and 2 white balls, it's water, H2O. The red ball is O and 2H, the positives at the 2 on the top is the hydrogen. Okay, so when the water molecules come in contact with the salt, what is it doing? It is actually sodium chloride, and sodium is highly reactive. We know that, right? So what this water molecule will do, it will break the salt molecule, that is NaCl, into sodium separate, chlorine separate. Can you see this? right? And sodium is going to get attracted towards the oxygen of water, and chlorine will get attracted to the oxygen, sorry, chlorine, sorry, hydrogen of the water. So you can see here they have shown it, chlorine getting attached, or there is an arrow drawn between the hydrogen of water and chlorine. Clear? And if you see here, sodium is coming near to the oxygen. Can you see the difference? First of all, when you uh, uh, take a, let's say, a tablespoon of salt and you put in, or you just insert it inside the water, when you just drop it inside the water, what is going to happen? The water molecules have oxygen and hydrogen. So at the moment it comes in contact, these sodium, that is chloride, sodium and chloride bonding, the negative positive charge bonding will break off. Sodium will start moving separately, oxygen will start, sorry, chlorine will start moving separately. Sodium will get attached with the oxygen of water, and chlorine will get attached with the hydrogen of water. So let me change what is happening. The positive charge will get attracted to the oxygen present in water, okay? And the negative charge will get attracted to the hydrogen. Okay, so automatically the bond between the negative and positive of the ionic compound will break off. Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so therefore it is soluble in water, because water itself, what is water? Formula for water? H2O. And we have learned in acids and bases that H2O can break off as H positive and OH negative. So the water molecule itself breaks into positive ion and negative ion. So it helps the ionic compound also to break into their respective ions, that is positive, negative ions. And there is a combination which happens, right? It's kind of a, you can say, a double displacement. So if I want to write the reaction, okay, let me show you it below. So what will happen? There is a two-step thing which is happening. H2O, water molecule, will break off into, sorry, H positive and OH negative. Correct? So if I'm adding this water with sodium chloride, right? What will happen? The sodium chloride is also going to break off into sodium ion and chlorine ion. Now this sodium is getting attached with actually hydroxide and giving us what? Together these two will give us NaOH plus HCl. Okay? You can do it for any ionic compound, any ionic compound, right? So if I'm going for, let's say, H2O, H positive plus OH negative, okay? And if you want to go for magnesium oxide, that is also going to break off as Mg plus 2 plus oxygen minus 2, correct? Now in this case, what will happen is we are going to get a magnesium hydroxide plus water, because we have extra oxygen from the ionic salt, right? So it will give us MgOH the whole twice plus H2. Am I clear with this? So this is called dissolution or solubility of ionic compound. Is this clear to all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so let's
Yes, ma'am.
let's go to the next topic. Properties of ionic compound. The first property is, what do you see in the picture? Just have a look. The first picture A, the liquid which is inside is distilled water. Okay, it's a transparent liquid. The second liquid is, I think, a solution of salt water, or maybe, I think, 1 minute, they have not mentioned. Yeah, so the ionic compound in solid state. Okay, and in the second one, ionic compound dissolved in water. So what we are trying to show here is that when you take a pure distilled water, there are no free ions to move. We need free electrons for conduction of electricity. That is the definition of electricity, free electrons. The movement or flow of electrons is called as electricity, correct? So from the distilled water, we will not obtain any free electrons. When will I get free electrons? When will we get free electrons? When any compound breaks into their individual ions. That is when they are going to release the electrons. So distilled water will not have. So the bulb is not glowing. When you take a salt, simply if you take salt, like the white powdered salt, and you just put it into the into that particular beaker, and you have put the bulb. It's not glowing, right? Because in solid structure, as the picture shows, the negative and positive ions are so intactly packed with each other, correct? There's no space between them. There are no free electrons moving. Can you see that much?
Yes, ma'am.
So there are no ions which are being moved, released, or sorry, they are not free to move around. So they will not give out any electrons. So current cannot be conducted. But when you mix the same salt in water, so it becomes aqueous solution of water. So it's a solution. So we have free electrons moving. We have ions, positive ion of sodium, chlorine negative ion, hydroxyl, hydrogen. These ions are moving. At the same time, free electrons are also present. Because of the free electrons moving around in the solution allows the bulb to glow. So what is the property we are talking about? We are saying that ionic compounds in solid state do not conduct electricity. That is what we are trying to understand here. Okay. So when you took simple salt powder or salt in a test tube or in a beaker, and we try to insert two rods, one positive terminal and negative terminal, and we connected with the bulb didn't glow. So why? Because in solid state, there are no ions, there are no free ions to move around because of the rigid structure, the closed packed structure. Okay. Same way, if you melt the ionic compound, that means molten state, then it can conduct electricity. Because in molten state also, the heat, when you melt something, when you're melting an ionic compound, the solid structure will break and become liquid. So a little bit of spacing will increase. Okay. So there are some ions which are free to move about. And the bonding between the ions are being overcome, means the bonding between the ionic compound is broken because of the heat. Correct? There are three reasons in molten state. First of all, in molten state, the solid states little bit changes into liquid, little bit mix of liquid and solid. The interspacing between the ions increases, and few ions will break off due to the help of the heat, and there are some electrons to freely move. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Because this may come as a give reason and you should know it. Okay. And the last point, please read it. Did we see it and did you understand it? Yes. So what is the last sentence saying? The solution in an solution of an ionic compound means when an ionic compound is dissolved in water, the ions will start moving to the opposite electrode, means the negative ions will start moving to the positive and the positive ion will start moving to the negative. Again, oppositely charged attracts each other. Opposite charges attract each other. So thus electrons and ions are starting to move in the solution. So there is a flow of electrons in terms of ions. Therefore, electricity is conducted. Clear?
Yes, ma'am.
From the beginning, what
Yes,
did we
ma'am.
say? The physical
Yes,
state,
ma'am.
melting and boiling point, right? And then we are talking about conduction. Correct? Let's talk about the next. Okay, that's the end of the chapter. Okay, so only till here you have in this particular chapter. An ionic compound is very important. Now I'm going to talk a little bit of introduction and a little bit of first topic of periodic table. Now, what is a periodic table? Okay. Now, previous year you did had a chapter in biology which talked about classification of organisms, right? We divided the classification of organism as plant kingdom, animal kingdom, correct? Did you learn about that previous year?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So what we, as scientists, what were they doing? They were grouping them. They were putting the living organisms into groups to understand their features and characters. Same way back in 1800s, we were the scientists and people were discovering new elements and substances. That is the non-living substances around us. Okay. Now the scientists wanted to have a checklist. Checklist means a list of elements that we have. Are there any elements which have some similar properties? Do they behave the same way or not? They wanted to have a interconnection. Okay, so what they wanted to do, they wanted to put them into a group. Okay, so they started what we say making categories or groups, classification. The word is called as classification. In chemistry, the classification word means you are grouping them. Okay, so initially when they started, there was around, I think 32 elements, I'm not clear, but then later on within 50 years, 56 elements were discovered. Okay, today, in today's day, we have 116 elements that we have discovered. Okay, still people are discovering and understanding. What are elements? Elements are the basic. What are elements? Elements are the basic component through which everything is made. Atoms are nothing but elements. Water has element, air has element, soil has element, right? They all are made of elements, right? Elements combination together give us mixture, compounds, ions, right? So the basic structural unit of all the non-living things is element. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry. Okay. So what is periodic table? It's classification or arrangement of, or putting elements in groups. That is what the meaning of periodic table is. To form groups, to divide or arrange elements in a group. Now, some certain properties, certain rules for groups have to be followed. That is what different scientists tried among themselves, in what way they can arrange it. Like, is there anything common, like atomic mass? There was some relation between atomic mass. Was there some relation between the physical structure in which they are? Are they all solids? Are they all liquids, like that? Then how do they react with water? How do they react with oxygens? There were some different ways of arranging them into groups. Okay, so we'll be talking about each scientist or chemist who tried their level best to divide the elements into groups. Okay, now, why did scientists feel that it was necessary to divide the elements into groups? Because they wanted to understand the physical properties, the chemical properties. Why does a particular element, like suppose if I give you a very simple example, for hydrogen itself, we have OH, hydrogen reacting with oxygen. We can have water, we can have hydroxyl, correct? Both O and H. So they wanted to understand how a same atom will react with the same other atom in a different way. They wanted to understand the chemical reaction. Like suppose if you burn a magnesium strip, it becomes powdered black substance, yes or no? And it
Yes,
gives a
ma'am.
bright light. Okay, so they wanted to understand the reactions, what happens inside the chemically what is happening inside during the reaction that changes. The reactant and the product are so far away from each other in terms of chemical properties and physical properties. They have so many drastic differences between the reactant and the product. Like if I say water, what is water? Mixing of hydrogen gas and oxygen gas in a particular ratio. Hydrogen is a gas, oxygen is a gas, but water is a liquid. That is the physical difference. Hydrogen and oxygen do not react with every other substance, but water does. Water is neutral as per pH. Yes or no? So they
Yes,
wanted
Yes,
ma'am.
to
ma'am.
understand this. So that is why they believe that first, if we have a periodic table, a grouping, a specific way of grouping, will help us to understand the properties, the physical properties, the chemical properties of the elements. That's why they wanted to put them into groups. Did you understood why they needed a periodic table?
Yes, ma'am.
And the second
Yes,
reason
ma'am.
was gradually new. Yeah, the second reason was gradually new elements were discovered. Okay, and their properties, the way the chemical reactions these new elements were doing were completely new for them. Okay, And one more reason that you should always remember is when these elements were being placed in periodic table, or when they were trying to make groups for these particular elements, the only information that they had was the mass of the atom. Okay, they didn't knew that an atom had electrons, protons, or neutrons, because these were discovered gradually. It was a very long process. First electron was discovered after like 10 to 15 years later. Proton was discovered. After proton electron discovery, nearly 25 years later, neutron was discovered. So we know right now know the electronic configuration of atoms. We know how, where the protons are present, where the electrons are, the orbitals, everything we know. But that was discovered by the scientist, correct? So when they were putting into the grouping, they were not aware. Okay, so initially when scientists started doing it, they were basically focusing on the atomic mass, and they started arranging it according to the atomic mass. Okay, for only one scientist we are going to talk about, that is Dobiner. Okay, Dobiner is a German scientist. Okay, and look at the year 1817. And in the year 1860s, electron and proton was discovered. So these scientists didn't knew that what is there inside the element. Okay, they were thinking atom was the smallest possible particle in the earth, which cannot be further divided. That is what they were knowing. Okay, later on, after, you can see the year difference. It was discovered no, atom can be further divided, and it is made up of 3 particles, subparticles, that is electron, proton, and neutron. Correct? So that is why in 1817, when German scientist chemist tried to arrange, he was just trying to arrange elements, he tried to arrange them in similar properties. One of the major property that he was keeping in mind was atomic mass. Okay, am I clear with this much part?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, first of all, what did he do? He identified few elements and he made a group out of them. Okay. Then he was very specific that he was placing 3 elements in one group. And 3 elements together in one group is triad. Tri means 3, add means element. It's called Dobener's triad. He was the first person to try to make a group with the elements that were available during that time. He attempted to do that. No other scientist before him tried it. Okay, and he somehow gave a idea to other scientists that how should we go about making the group. Okay, and what did he do? He took the atomic mass of 2 or 3 atoms. He tried to make a relationship. He tried to create a relationship, and he made 3 elements in one group. What relationship? I'm going to explain in a minute. Okay. And the first 9 elements, during his time, he had around 16 elements were discovered. Okay, but he could only place 9 of them. So the first triad is sodium, lithium, potassium. Okay, you should remember these 3 triads. Sodium, lithium, potassium was his first triad. The second triad was strontium, calcium, barium. Okay, what is the rule? I'm going to explain, and then I'll come again to this slide. Okay, and the third group was bromine, chlorine, iodine. Okay. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes,
Now
ma'am.
let's understand the rule that he used. Okay. The rule that he used, he said was lithium, the first, let me change the color 1 minute. Now, lithium, sodium, and potassium were his first triad. So when you take the first element of the triad and the last element of the triad, you add it and divide by 2. So that is what they have done here. Can you see? 7 is the atomic mass. What are we adding? The atomic mass. Okay, the atomic mass means the mass of lithium plus the mass of sodium. Divide by 2 will give us the mass of potassium and lithium. I'm sorry, I fumbled. Lithium atomic mass plus potassium atomic mass. When you add it and divide by 2, you'll get the middle one. Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Correct? Check the
Yes,
second and the third triad. Is it correct? Is the rule applicable? Calcium and barium, they are the first and the last. So add their atomic masses divided by 2. Is it approximately same to that of strontium? Yes, we are getting 88.5, and that is nearly closer to strontium, that is 87.6. Correct?
yes, ma'am.
Similarly, if you go for chlorine and iodine, when you add their atomic masses and divide it by 2, we get bromine. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
So what is the rule? I'm going to
Yes,
type it in
ma'am.
the next previous slide. It's mean of the first and the atomic mass of the middle element is mean of first and third element. I'm just going to put it just 1 minute. Huh? Now, what is a mean means? Mean means you add them and divide by total, correct? So first and the last, first and third element, their atomic masses are to be added and divide by 2, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So you added
Yes,
the
ma'am.
lithium, that is 7, oh, sorry, and 23, I think. Wait a minute, I forgot the, let me just not change the slide. We'll check here itself, okay? Yeah, around 6.9. If you go to lithium, it's around 6.9, which is 7. And your potassium is 39. Okay. So your sodium will be 23, correct? That means it's 6 plus 39, no, not 6, 7. 6.9 is 7. Okay. So 7 plus 39 divided by 2 will give me 23, approximate 23. It's not going to be exact. What are we adding? The atomic mass of the first element and the third element divide by 2 will give us the atomic mass of the middle one, right?
Yes, ma'am.
That's
Yes, ma'am.
the rule. Okay. So I'm going to type out that rule here. And you can open your textbook page number 80, first paragraph, first line says that the atomic mass of the middle element was roughly the average or mean, okay, of the atomic mass of the other two elements. Understood this rule, all of you?
Yes, ma'am.
yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now beyond this, he around his time there was around 16. 1 minute, around 16. Yeah, around 16 elements were discovered. Okay, but still he could only show 9 of them. That means 3 tried. He tried to do the 4th one, but that doesn't match up with the rule. Okay, so he left. He couldn't do beyond that, and he couldn't explain also. Okay, but the focus that he was keeping in mind was atomic masses was his focus. The key rule that he was following was considering the atomic mass. Okay, so what are the drawbacks of Dobin's triad? He could identify only 3 groups of triad. He failed to arrange all the elements into the triads which were available during his time. Okay, and the second thing is, even if he tried to do it, okay, even if he tried to manage the triad, it couldn't satisfy the complete rule that he was talking about. Okay, but the best part or the most important what we say aspect of Dobin's triad is, the important feature is, it allowed other scientists and other chemists to try to group the elements using this rule. Not the triad rule, but at least work on it. And many scientists started to work on arranging elements into groups. And that is what we are going to learn as periodic table. Okay. So in the next class, we'll talk about the next 2 scientists. What did they do and how did they do to group it and create a periodic table? Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Any
ma'am.
doubts till now?
Yes, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay.
No.
Okay. So that's it for today's class. I'll meet in the next class. We'll discuss further. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.